how to harden your SpaceX Starlink from an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much once again joining me for tea time. Today we have a little bit of misty morning and focus combination. That zing, that bergamot, so good, so good. I hope you're joining me with your cup of tea, maybe a cup of coffee, hanging out, talking tech, talking photo, talking video. Today is a technology day. We're going to be talking about EMPs. We're going to be talking about SpaceX Starlink. I know it's kind of an odd topic, but I was reading an article over on Space News, and it was speaking about the Undersecretary of Defense at the Pentagon was speaking at a space symposium just a couple of days ago. And she was asking that the private sector was to develop like commercial radiation hardened electronics, right? That they needed to dive in deeper to this type of hardened electronics. And I'm thinking about, I'm like, that has to do with EMPs or electromagnetic pulse, right? Why else would you want these hardened electronics? It's almost like she was stating this knowing something was imminent. Why would you make this statement to not only US, but also to international? Because at this symposium, you have everybody. Kind of odd. But I thought it was fascinating nonetheless. So I was thinking about this. And I said, you know what? They're talking about it. How about if we talk about it? They're thinking about their systems and how to harden their systems against an EMP. How about if we do the same thing with ours? Because we know that the internet is very important to us and our families. Is there anything that we can do with SpaceX Starlink to harden it? And I came up with some things. Now, before I get into all that, I definitely want to get into this article, right? I'm going to just read a bit of it so you know the background or background story. And then we'll get into my thoughts and how I think that you can at least mitigate, all right, the effects of an EMP or an electromagnetic pulse. So what exactly is an EMP anyways? I wrote this down because I think that it's important to get it right so you know what this is all about. So it's simply this. An EMP, or an electromagnetic pulse, is a burst of electromagnetic radiation. It can be natural, like that caused by a solar storm, or man-made, like those generated by a nuclear explosion or by a specialized weapon. Specialized weapon, keep that in mind. EMPs can disrupt or damage electronic equipment and systems, potentially causing widespread disruption to communication, transportation, power grids, and other critical infrastructure. So, now we're clear what the hell an EMP is, all right? So let's get into this article. But before I do, I want to say that if you enjoyed this content, even in the least, throw it a thumbs up. That'd be very helpful. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not. If you are, thank you very much. Click this little button over here so when I go live or when a new video comes out, you'll be notified of it immediately. And if you want to give back to the channel, say thank you. There's a little thank you button right down here. Give $1 or $2 if you like. If not, that's perfectly fine. Consider becoming a member of the channel. That would be even better. Even better. And if you want more Starlink content, I put together a Starlink playlist. Click on this when you're done watching this video. And if you haven't downloaded any of my ebooks yet, they are free just for you being here. Go to JCristina.com/books. And finally, if you're looking for a VPN, keeping your data safe, look no further. Check out PureVPN. The nice folks over there gave us a promo code, which is JCristina. If you use that at checkout, you're going to get 15 additional % off, or you could just simply go to JCristina.com/VPN. So now that the housekeeping is finished, let's get right into this article. It starts out by saying the Undersecretary of Defense and Engineering at the Pentagon is calling on the commercial industry to develop affordable radiation-hardened electronics. Commercial innovation in this area can help to ensure that the security and resilience to our satellite system. She said this at the 39th Space Symposium just the other day. The comments from the Pentagon's top research official and Undersecretary of Defense further evidence that the U.S. military is concerned about the possibility of detonation of a nuclear weapon in space that could degrade or permanently disable individual satellites or entire constellations. constellations. Quote, by making this statement about radiation enforcement in front of the global audience in the US and foreign commercial and government space operators, she warns the global community about space threats without identifying what the US might know that led to such a warning. Very interesting. All space systems would already be hardened against the background radiation of space, which makes her call to action novel and an increase over previous statements regarding space defense. Absolutely. Yes, everything in space is already hardened to radiation, but not necessarily to the power or the impact of an EMP. Concerns of a new Russian anti-satellite weapon being developed, but not yet fielded, were confirmed by the White House in February. At the time, John Kirby, White House National Security Communication Advisor, did not address reports that the Russian weapon was either nuclear powered or designed to produce an electromagnetic pulse to disable satellites' electronics. So we have an EMP weapon, or possibly just simply detonating a nuclear device in LEO, let's say in low Earth orbit. There's two means of doing this. Still, those reports raise concerns about the radiation hardening of space-based electronics. Quote, recent reporting regarding the prospect of Russia launching a nuclear warhead on a long-range booster or from an orbiting platform raises additional concerns of nuclear detonation in space. In the Space Symposium remarks, the Undersecretary of Defense also called attention to the Defense Department 2024 Commercial Space Integration Strategy released earlier this month. Quote, this strategy seeks to align the department's efforts to drive more effective integration of commercial space solutions into national security space architecture. Central to this integration of commercial space capabilities into defense operations is the imperative to broadly diversify our capabilities to providing increased resilience. So this article was very interesting to me, and it made me think a little bit. How can we prepare for an EMP? What can we do to harden our network? What can we do to harden our SpaceX Starlink? So what I did is I came up with a couple of ideas on what we can do to harden our SpaceX Starlink, to make it less vulnerable, let's say, to an EMP. Not 100%, but less vulnerable. So the first thing that we can try doing would be shielding, obviously, the unit. Now, we can always use like a Faraday cage and shield it from any external radiation or any external RF or radio frequency, and that would definitely work. Now, the positive here is, yes, an EMP will not affect your router that's sitting inside of a Faraday cage, but the problem with that is the Wi-Fi will not get out either. So what we'd have to do is turn off Wi-Fi on our SpaceX Starlink router and use a secondary router to be able to propagate Wi-Fi throughout your area. Now, we've done that forever. Ever since the very beginning, I created mesh network videos. You can go back and look at that SpaceX Starlink playlist. You'll see a bunch of videos on how to do that. So that is very simple, and that will definitely protect your router from getting hit with an EMP or any type of electromagnetic pulse. Now, another thing that's very important is surge suppression, a surge protector. Now, I've told you guys in the past, you need to have all of your electronics on a UPS. Now, I personally have a UPS specifically dedicated to SpaceX Starlink, and that is it. All right. Now, some people like to have these big UPSs and put everything on there. I'm not that guy. I'd rather have a bunch of smaller ones. So if one goes bad, to change out a battery in that is cheaper than one of those mega ones. Okay. That's my personal opinion. I don't like putting all my eggs in one basket. That's how I work. Anyways, having a UPS. Matter of fact, you know what I'm going to do? Down below in the comment area, I'm going to list the UPSs that I recommend. Now, there's some really good ones. There's some really expensive, some cheaper ones out there. You want to get something that is pretty damn good. Spending your money on this type of stuff can just pay you back tenfold in the long run, right? From not going down. People don't understand this, but yes, if you get hit with lightning, that UPS is going to help you, right? It's going to pop, and you're not going to damage the electronics on the other side or plugged into it. That's great. But what people don't understand is brownouts are worse than a lightning strike. Like, what the hell are you talking about? They are. You know when the lights do this, they go, and everything goes like black slowly. That's called a brownout. Well, what happens is electronics at that point, they draw a ton of juice. They're like, holy hell, I'm not getting enough. And they start sucking in, and then all of a sudden they get hit. Brownouts are really bad. And that's one of the things that UPSs do also. They defend against those brownouts. They keep an even, nice, clean power to your electronics. Now, if you have the extra money, a true sine wave UPS is a good way to go because you're going to get clean, once again, clean power to any device plugged into it at all times. Doesn't matter if there's a brownout or if there's a spike due to a burst of electricity, maybe an EMP or maybe a lightning strike, you're still going to get the exact same electricity going to your device all the time. So they work out good. Once again, they're a little bit more expensive. Another great way to mitigate any type of EMP or an electromagnetic pulse of any kind or lightning strike or anything would be proper grounding. People don't understand proper grounding. It is very important that your electronics are properly grounded. Most people just rely on the grounding in their house, right? They plug their appliance into the wall, that wall goes onto the breaker goes, and they have a grounding strap that goes into the ground with a long rod. Okay, that's basically how it works. Well, how about your Starlink antenna? Is it grounded? Well, according to SpaceX, yes, it's grounded because the Cat5 cable that's in it does have a grounding wire in that cable. If it gets hit, it'll go through your home or business electric and once again into the ground. Well, that's not really good enough. What I would do is ground that antenna. How do you ground the antenna? Well, it's very, very simple. That's all you need to do is drill a small hole in the arm that your dishy is mounted to, just a small hole, and then file it down a little bit where you're going to be putting a bolt through it so that there's really good connection there. All right. So you would connect that bolt to a grounding strap. That grounding strap would go into a wire, a copper wire that would lead down the wall into another grounding strap or a bolt that gets bolted onto a rod, an 8, 10, 12-foot copper rod that you bang into the ground. Starting up on the top of a ladder, bing, 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 into the ground. That's where you attach it. That is good ground. What I'll do, once again, down below, I'll give you the parts that you would use to do this and do it right, and the gauge of the grounding wire that you should use and all that. I'll put it down below. So that would really help a lot. Because even if there's a lightning strike on your dish, you're not going to have to worry about it. You're not going to have to worry about your router taking the brunt of it and that lightning strike going through just a tiny, tiny grounding cable that's in the Cat5 cable. It's just ridiculous. It's going to burn, okay? So it will travel from that pole into the bolt, into the grounding strap, through that wire, the grounding wire, into that pole, that grounding rod that we pounded into the ground. So very, very simple, but this will help a lot. This will help massively. Once again, not only for an EMP, but for a lightning strike. So do it. Very simple. It doesn't take a lot. All right. Once again, I'll put down the parts, what you need down below. Also, think about redundancy. I personally have multiple dongles. For example, those little Ethernet boxes, those Ethernet adapters for SpaceX Starlink, because I had a couple go bad. Right? So I have a few of them. I have extra. Also, when it comes to routers, I probably have about 8 of them. I was reviewing them. So I don't expect you to have 8, but to have one extra one is probably not a bad thing. Just during the last live that I did, the video started flickering. Come to find out, the Elgato card that's in there, the 4K, it has like 4 HDMIs on it, all kinds of stuff. It's an expensive card. It went south, but I had another one. So literally by the next day, we were up and running. I actually replaced the cable at the same time too. Why? Because I had another cable too. It's good to have redundancy. So if you can have redundancy with this, it's a good idea. Maybe you have a second dish. Maybe you have a second router. Maybe you buy an extra router instead of using it as a mesh network AP, an access point. Maybe you just have it set aside. So if you need it later on because yours blew up, you have a secondary. For me, I actually have 3 internets. I have terrestrial, non-terrestrial, and I also have cellular. I have AT&T Uverse. I have cellular, which is the T-Mobile home internet. And then finally, I have SpaceX Starlink as my main, which is non-terrestrial. So I have all 3 covered. and all three come into the building. Why? Because I'm anal retentive. Anyways, the other thing that you can do is to minimize the exposure of your antenna. The problem that I have here, and the Achilles heel on this whole entire SpaceX Starlink system, is that antenna. Whereas we can put our router into a Faraday cage and it doesn't get affected by any type of electromagnetic pulse at all. The antenna is literally on the top of the roof, okay? It's gonna get the brunt of any type of EMP going by, okay? So that, once again, I think is the Achilles heel. So doing that grounding strap, I think, is number one. That is really, really important. Another thing that, if you were to research this and say, hey, how do I secure a satellite system? They will speak about the feed horn or the LMB and how you can secure that or harden that. If you don't know what that is, remember 2 years ago when we had to get internet TV through a satellite company like Dish Network or DirecTV, which we don't need to anymore? They're going out of business. At the end of those dish, or in the center of the dish, you have like this stick, right? And at the end of the stick, you have an LMB and your feed horn, right? That whole thing, that contraption. Well, you can harden those. And that's what they were talking about doing so when you do any kind of research on that. The problem with that is the SpaceX Starlink doesn't have a dish that works like that. It has hundreds of antennas built into this flat panel. And each one of those, they call it a phase array. That's what they are, instead of the old school that has the LMB. This is a phased array, meaning that it can direct the signal without having to move the dish. It can direct the beam based on turning things on. And anyways, we're not going to get into it. The bottom line is it's a phased array. So you can't harden that. Not like that, at least, right? Because there is no LMB. There is no feed horn. So what do you do? Now, this is pure speculation. All right, if I'm wrong here, please let me know, because I know there's people smarter than me out here. I was thinking about this. Now, if there was an EMP, let's say a bomb exploded above you, right? You're going to get the detonation, you're going to get that blast coming down from right above you. At that point, it's pretty much screwed, okay? But if it happened further off, like at an angle, and that blast or that wave, that electromagnetic pulse comes through, let's say from the west to the east, well, if you were to come up with a metal Faraday cage, let's say, around your dish, and the top being open, and you still have 120 degrees of view of the sky, now that, I believe, should be able to help. At least dissipate that initial blast of that electromagnetic pulse, okay? So just think about that, like a box that's open at the top, but still wide enough to be able to see 120 degrees. That's the most important thing. Is this developed yet? No. Has anyone made it? No. But maybe if they're watching this video, they'll make it. I think that that's an interesting possibility. So, to recap, number one, if you can put your router into a Faraday cage, do it. Turn the Wi-Fi off. You don't need it, and you are fine. That thing is going to be secured. It can get blasted with whatever. Nothing's getting through it. That's the beauty of a Faraday cage. Number two, surge suppression, surge protection. That includes not only surge, but brownouts. And if you can afford a true Sinewave, a UPS that actually produces really clean power, that is going to be your best bet. Once again, down below, I will put information on where to find those. Next, grounding. Make sure everything is grounded and grounded well. My personal opinion, if you have Dishy on your roof, ground it, right? It's going to take you just a Sunday, right, to be able to pound that rod into the ground, get up on the top of the ladder, ping, 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 ping. It doesn't take much to do. Get an 8, 9, 10 foot, 12 foot, whatever you can find rod, and you are golden. Once again, down below, I'll give you some of the parts that you'll need to be able to make that happen. Then, of course, redundancy. Redundancy is godly. You need to have redundancy with everything. Have a secondary dish, have a secondary router, have secondary things, whatever it is. Preparation is important, right? Once again, we're not talking about being crazy Chicken Little, right? Running around, that type of prepper, but just simply getting things in order that if something does happen, you have a backup to be able to replace it. I could tell you this, and you let me know if I'm wrong. If an EMP occurred over the US today, let's say at noon, and all electronics went dead, right? The internet's down. Your cell phone no longer works. You cannot communicate with Wi-Fi. You cannot communicate at all. There's nothing, right? What would happen? There would be immediate panic. Every schoolyard in the US will be flooded with parents picking up their kids. Why? Because they couldn't communicate with their child any longer. So they're going to pick up the child and bring them home, right, into a secure environment for safety. That's just if the internet goes down. Things will get crazy really quick. Now, when I was coming up, there was no cell phones. So if the internet went down, it really wouldn't matter, would it? Right? We were like a latchkey kid, right? I took my bike to school, came home, opened the door, closed the door, ate some chips or whatever until my parents came home. That's how it worked. Today, things are a little bit different. People are on edge, okay? You can't communicate with your kid for a few seconds and all hell's breaking loose. I am calling the National Guard. Anyways, things would get bad really quickly. I make light of it, make jest of it, but it is true, right? If you did not have your internet and communication went down, everything would go sideways very, very quickly. No GPS. You would have no delivery of anything. Everything would just come to a complete halt. So us being able to put in some type of mitigation, some type of preventative systems, I think is smart. When you have the Pentagon's Undersecretary of Defense speaking about having all electronics hardened, or that the commercial and the private sector create more and more hardened electronics, that doesn't bode well. I mean, I don't know about you. I read into things. That's what I do, right? That's what I do on this channel. I'm the guy that likes looking underneath the kimono. Sometimes it's not a good idea, but I do it anyways, for you. Anyways, I hope you guys got something out of this video. If you did, throw it a thumbs up. That would be awesome. And don't forget, head over to my website, JCristina.com, where you can find all the photography tools I've invented for you and me over the many years. Check out my merch, check out my tees, pick something up, support my family. That'd be awesome. Many blessings to you and your family. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected, and we'll see you in the next one. Love you guys.